Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
the recording started.
It started. Okay, so with your permission, I am recording this class. And we will talk about Julius Caesar. As you know, the play was written in 1599, okay, and it was called The Tragedy of Julius Caesar. That is the complete title of the play, okay, The Tragedy of Julius Caesar. Now, the England of Shakespeare's time was a very interesting place. In that it was the time when newer worlds were being explored, newer ideas were being spoken about. Okay, and there was a great deal of interest in the occult. There was a great deal of interest in something called cosmology. Okay, by the time it's the next class, I will also get a PPT ready for you people, so it will be easier to follow these things. My internet, my class seems to have frozen, so yeah, okay, I'm really sorry. Okay, so yeah, there was a great deal of interest in what we call cosmology, which was the interaction between planets and human life. Okay, what we here call astrology, yeah, that used to be called cosmology in the time of Shakespeare. And people were greatly intrigued by the impact that planets made on the lives of people. Superstition was a rife or very, very prevalent in Shakespeare's England. Okay, and there was great deal of national pride over the way that England was carrying out expeditions and looking towards conquering new worlds and new places and so on. There was a great deal of writing that centered its imagination around all of these kind of narratives. So that is why you see that in the plays of Shakespeare, people are setting out to distant lands. They talk about the sights of strange places. There is a great deal of, let's say, the curiosity that Elizabethan England had, okay, about places over and beyond their territories. Okay, and also it was a time of great patriotism as far as England was concerned. They had begun to believe in the greatness of their country and were eager to have portrayals which presented them in a very, very positive light. Okay, so if you examine the works of Shakespeare in totality, you see that there are tragedies, there are comedies, there are romances, and there are histories. Understand? And his histories have drawn their sources from various writings. Okay, the works of Plutarch and so on. But what he has done is that he has given them his own interpretative twist. Okay, and that's why there could be anachronisms in the plays of Shakespeare. Anachronisms means where there is a blurring of timelines. Okay, events that might have taken place at one point of time are kind of either postponed or advanced to another time. So that all those kind of anachronisms you may find. Some historical inaccuracies might be there, but all said and done, Shakespeare's history plays are very powerful on account of the strength of the characters that he presents. Okay, so you have Julius Caesar, Caesar in Julius Caesar. You have Henry the Eighth, you have Henry the Fourth. Okay, you have Richard the Second, and all of these protagonists have been very, very powerful figures. And Julius Caesar in particular is a play that has held the interest of Shakespeare fans for more than 400 years on account of certain fundamental characteristics of the play. Okay, and the first of those being the dignity of aesthetic. Okay, the dignity of aesthetics rather. Now, by that, what I mean is that the play is very well structured. Okay, and the characters are very well threshed out. Okay, and none of the characters are perfect. Okay, all of them seem to have some fundamental flaw or the other, which contributes to their sense of the dramatic. Okay, it contributes to the sense of the dramatic in the play. So you have Julius Caesar, who is one of the triumvirate, who is a great man. He's the leader of the republic. All of that is there. But within him, he nurses an ambition to become the king of Rome. Sorry, to become the king of Rome. Okay, he wants to rule over Rome. There is some sort of an autocratic tendency. Okay, a tendency to be a dictator that is there in Julius Caesar. All right, you have Mark Antony, who is a wonderful friend, but he is also slightly degenerate. Okay, there is something of the philanderer about him that one may not take very seriously. And coming to Caesar, sorry, there's one more aspect I should have mentioned. Apart from ambition, there was also overvaulting ego, a sense of overweening, WEENING, sense of overweening pride in himself. Okay, so those were the two tragic flaws of Julius Caesar. In terms of Mark Antony, he never really took his role in the republic very seriously. Okay, he was a kind of a philanderer, a man who wanted to enjoy the good things in life. His philosophy was more Epicurean, EPICUREAN, Epicurean. He was given to pleasures and leisure and so on. You had Brutus, who was a brilliant administrator, a man with a great sense of justice, but he was fundamentally weak. Okay, he could be swayed very easily. Okay, you have the other peripheral characters like Cassius and Casca, who become instrumental in speeding up the tragedy. Okay, who push the tragedy forward. Without Cassius and Casca, this tragedy would not have possibly taken place. Okay, so what we have to see is that this is a play that has all the ingredients that go into making what we call life. Okay, so that way it is very, very close to life. Okay, not that other plays of Shakespeare were not like that, but yet the characters seem way more relatable in case of Julius Caesar. So the Act 1, Scene 1, that itself sets the tone of the play. So right from the first act itself, from the first scene of the first act itself, what the play does is, it sets the events into motion. Okay, now this is something called in medias res, INMEDIASRES. That is right in the middle of action. Okay, so when the play opens itself, we know that Rome is not an easy republic. Okay, there is some fundamental civil unrest brewing in Rome. That is what we are given to understand. So Rome seems to be a republic that is in the throes of simmering civil unrest. Okay, keep that in mind. And this is best exemplified through the conversation between Flavius and Marullus, okay, and the crowd of Romans who are coming to meet Caesar when he returns from his victory over Pompey. Okay, his victory over Pompey. Now, see, Pompey was actually Caesar's son-in-law. Okay, and he was one of the triumvirate, the three people who were supposed to be, let's say, the overseers or the custodians of the Republic of Rome. See, Rome was not a monarchy. It was not ruled by a king. Okay, there were three people who were at the top of the, let's say, pyramid of governance that Rome was at one point of time. So what happened was that Pompey nursed ambitions and Caesar went on to hunt him down. Okay, and he, when he goes chasing after him to Egypt, the Egyptians present the pickled head of Pompey to Caesar. When I say pickled, I mean they just put it in salt water. Please don't imagine too much. Okay, so there is a play by Shaw which is called Caesar and Cleopatra. It's a delightful play. It presents the Egyptian side of this. Understand? So what we have to understand is that though Shaw wrote Caesar and Cleopatra centuries after Shakespeare, in terms of the sequence of events, Caesar and Cleopatra takes place before Julius Caesar. Okay, do we have any confusion so far?
No, ma'am.
Am I comprehensible? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Am I
ma'am.
going too fast?
No, ma'am.
Okay. If there is any problem like that, you can put it in the chat box. You can always say, ma'am, please repeat or something like that. I've kept the chat box also open. So yes. So what I was telling you was that in terms of chronology, Shaw's play comes before Julius Caesar. So in Shaw's play, finally what happens is that, Julius Caesar sets sail to go to Rome. Okay. And in this play, it opens with his return to Rome. Okay, so when he comes after having won his victory over Pompey, there are people, the citizens of Rome, are standing there to welcome him. Okay, and there are various statues that are placed all over Rome, not of Caesar, but general statues, and they are all decorated and so on. And what happens is that these two tribunes or soldiers, Flavius and Marullus, go on and pull down all those decorations. Okay, because they are not happy that the whole city is readying itself to meet and greet and celebrate Caesar. Okay, so in the process, they meet a couple of workmen and they ask, "Who are you?" And there is a man who says, "I am a cobbler." Okay, now the word play of that, the term cobbler, because why? They ask him, "What sort of a cobbler are you?" And he says, "I mend soles." Now, as you know, souls has two meanings. One is Atma, okay, your inner soul. The other is the sole of the shoe, okay, the underside of the shoe. So, that kind of a word play is there. And Flavius and Marullus are very angry with the crowd. They are like, "Didn't you once upon a time stand here welcoming Pompey when he brought riches to the Republic? Now, how can you stand here and welcome Caesar, who is responsible for having killed Pompey?" Okay, so this kind of anger is there, and Marullus wonders if they should do that on the day of the Lupercal. Okay, and Flavius says we must do that, because if Caesar finds that everything has been decorated in his honor, he might nurse ambitions to become the sole ruler of Rome, something that they could not really allow. Okay. So that is all about Act 1, Scene 1. Okay. Now,
Excuse me, ma'am. Just one minute.
yeah, sure.
Ma'am, what does the first act, show about the fickleness of Shakespeare's crowd in general?
Good. Yes. See, that is what I was telling you. Once upon a time, the crowd was, standing there to welcome Pompey when he returned from his conquests of distant lands, when he returned with riches. Okay. Now that very crowd is standing there to welcome the killer of Pompey. Understand? With the same amount of joy. So what you see is that the public is very fickle, and this is very, very important in terms of what is to come later on. Okay, so I want you to ask me this question after Mark Antony has given his speech.
Yes.
Understand? So you see this, and by the way, we could say that Julius Caesar is one of Shakespeare's most politically aware plays. Okay, it is also a play that shows public behavior in terms of, let's say, governance, in terms of politics. Okay, because see, the condition is not very different even today. Understand? You take a place like Madhya Pradesh. Okay, in Madhya Pradesh, there were recently by-elections because a certain number of MLAs who had been elected under the Congress banner jumped to BJP. Okay, they jumped to BJP, and what happened was that they had to hold by-elections there, and those very same majority of those people were voted back into power under the BJP ticket. Okay, so what were the people voting for? Who were the people voting for? Were they voting for an ideology? Were they voting for the person? See, so the fickleness of the crowd is something that we can see around us almost every day. At one point of time, there might be a lot of public anger towards one person in a program like Big Boss, for that matter. And then the next day, when something else happens, the entire public sympathy moves towards that. So how different is that from what happens in the first act and the first scene, first act of Julius Caesar? It is not very different. Understand? So the fickleness of public of the people is shown through the words of Flavius and Marcellus as they chide, or scold the people for having, for celebrating the return of Julius Caesar, the very man who killed Pompey, whose return with great riches for the republic from distant lands these people had once celebrated. Okay, so this means that people will celebrate power more than the person. It is power that they celebrate. It is power that people bow down to. Okay, so any other doubts like that? Does that answer your question? Yeah.
No, ma'am. Ma'am, you
Yeah.
said something about Epicurean philosophy.
Yeah.
Who is that about?
Mark
Mark
Antony.
Antony.
Mark
Mark
Antony.
Antony.
Okay.
Ma'am, can you say about this immediate RSS? I didn't get the spelling well.
What?
There
In
is
media res.
in
Okay.
media. I'm sorry.
Okay. IN.
Yes, ma'am. You can carry on.
MED is res. In MEDIAS. In medias res. It is. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So, shall we continue now? Any other doubts? Okay. I will exactly wait for 5 seconds now onwards, and then I'll just continue with my life. Okay. I'm not waiting for that answer also. Okay. Next we come to Act 1, Scene 2. Now in Act 1, Scene 2, Caesar has returned to Rome and he has come in great triumph. And what he does is that he calls his wife Calpurnia to his side and tells her to stand by the side of the path, when Mark Antony passes, so that he may touch her when he passes, because Calpurnia is barren. She doesn't have children, and it is believed that the runners of the festival of Lupercal, when they run by and they touch a barren woman, she could have children. Understand? So, Calpurnia does that, and he also talks to Mark Antony. That's the first time that we see Mark Antony in the play. Okay. Now, as Caesar passes by, a soothsayer from the crowd calls out, "Caesar, beware the Ides of March." Okay, but Caesar doesn't really care about all of these pronouncements because he thinks he's over and above such ideas. Okay, yes. And then what happens is that we see a conversation between Cassius and Brutus. Okay, let me just come to that portion. Can somebody please take that segment? Anupriya?
I think it.
You got it? Okay.
With exchange of everybody except Brutus and Cassius. I'll start from that. Cassius. Will you go see the order of the course? Brutus. Not I. Cassius. I pray you do. Brutus. I'm not gamesome. I do lack some part of that quick spirit that is in Antony. Let me not hinder, Cassius, your desires. I leave you. Cassius. Brutus. I do observe you now, right? I have known from your eyes that gentleness and show of love as I was wont to have. You bear too stubborn and too strange a hand over your friend that loves you. Brutus. Cassius, be not deceived. If I had veiled my look, I turned the trouble of my countenance merely upon myself. Vexed I am of late with passions of some difference, conceptions only proper to myself, which I give some soil perhaps to my behaviours. But let me not therefore, my good friends, be grieved, among which number, Cassius, be you one, nor construe any further neglect than that poor Brutus, with himself as at war, forgets the shows of love to other men. Cassius. Then, Brutus, I have much mistook your passion, by means whereof this breast of mine hath buried thoughts of great value, worthy cogitations. Tell me, good Brutus, can you see your face?
Yes. So see here, you see that Cassius and Brutus are having this very interesting conversation where Cassius is slowly, sounding out or trying to probe the mind of Brutus. Okay, he wants to know whether Brutus would be amenable, amenable, whether Brutus would be amenable to joining the cause that Cassius is building up. See here, what we should understand is that actually speaking, Cassius is the main, let's say, instigator of this rebellion against Caesar. Okay, and as time goes by, we will be able to find greater clarity as far as Cassius's motive is concerned. Okay, so here, what Cassius, asks him is, "How are you feeling?" And Brutus says, "I am not very happy." And he's like, "Now see why?" And he says, Cassius says, "Brutus, I have noticed that you are not very happy these days." See, that is a classic move. I don't know whether any of you have tried it, but if somebody is just sitting there very normally, and then you go up to them and say, "You are looking unhappy. I have noticed it a few days now." Immediately the person is like, "Yes, there is a lot troubling me." Till then the person had absolutely no problem. You understand? So this is a way of planting a seed in someone's mind. See, that way, this technique that Cassius employs, Shakespeare has also employed in the case of Iago when he plants that doubt in the mind of Othello in the play Othello. Yes. So, Brutus says, "Well, I'm not troubled about anything. I'm just troubled about myself. There are some doubts in my mind. I'm having some consideration, some second thoughts, and so on." And then Cassius says that, "Brutus, you should see your face." And he says, "No, Cassius, I can't see my face. I can only see my face as it is reflected on other surfaces." And then Cassius says, "Your face is very sad, Brutus. It is very sad that you have no mirror within yourself to show your face to you." Okay. And he says, "You are the man. I have heard that you are the one who is most respected in all of Rome, maybe except for Caesar, but otherwise everybody speaks greatly about you. They have a wonderful opinion about you, and they say that this age, this time should have been mastered by Brutus and not Caesar." Okay, and then Brutus asks him, "What danger are you leading me into? What kind of thoughts are you trying to put into my head?" Because this is what Cassius says. "I have heard where many of the best respect in Rome, except immortal Caesar, speaking of Brutus and groaning underneath this age's yoke, have wished that noble Brutus had his eyes." So see here, like sole, S-O-L-E, which is the underside of a shoe or the underside of the foot. Eyes are also being used as a metaphor in Shakespeare. So this is the beauty of Shakespeare's language. The meanings have multiple layers. Okay, so he says, "Oh Brutus, I wish that you had your eyes so that you could see reality." And he says, "I have heard the best people of Rome, except for Caesar." See, he puts that hook there. Okay, except for Caesar, I've heard the greatest minds of Rome saying that they wish that Brutus opened his eyes because they are groaning. The whole of Rome is suffering under the yoke. Okay, the yoke is something that you tie bulls to when you want to plow the field. Understand? Yoke is a sign of great trouble or labor or oppression. Understand? So it says all of Rome is groaning under this oppression, and they're all wishing that Brutus had his eyes. That is, Brutus would open his eyes and look around. So that is when Brutus asks, "What dangers are you leading me into?" To which Cassius says, "Brutus, you be ready to hear what I have to tell you." He says, "You are saying that you can't see yourself. So I am going to be your mirror. I am going to reflect." Okay, and he says, "Don't be jealous on me, Brutus. Okay, because I want to tell you that I can see you for what you are, and I can see the greatness that resides within you." And by the time he says all these things, there is a great deal of shouting that comes from the crowd. And Brutus wonders, what is the shouting about? And suddenly he says, "I do fear the people choose Caesar for their king." He uses the word fear. Immediately Cassius catches it on and says, why did you say fear? Why did you say fear? He said, you might have been afraid. That is why you are, thinking that way. You don't want him to be the king, is why you said fear. Correct? And Brutus says, no, Sir Cassius, I don't want him to be the king, though I love him a lot. And he says, but why are you keeping me here? Why are you talking to me? What is it that you want to tell me? And he says, and then it says, Brutus says, if he ought toward the general good. Okay, this is line 85. If it ought toward the general good, set honor in one eye and death in the other. See, again, I comes back. I will look on both indifferently, for let the gods speed me as I love the name of honor than I fear death. Okay, so he says, if there is honor in one eye and fear in the other, I will not care about any of them, because I would any day choose honor over death. This is one of the first instances when the word honor comes into the play. Okay, honor is one of the central themes of Julius Caesar, the play. Understand? Because, Caesar died for honor, Brutus stabbed him for honor, and Mark Antony uses the trope, T-R-O-P-E, okay, the theme of honor in order to rouse sentiments. And finally, what was a succession struggle, a struggle for succession, becomes a struggle for honor. To regain one's honor, to retain one's honor. Understand? So honor is a very central theme in the play. Okay. And Cassius says, I know that, you are a very honorable man. And, Cassius says, honor is the subject of my story. I also want to tell you about honor. Okay. And he gives this example of how once upon a time, he and Caesar had swum into the raging river Tiber when there was a storm and there was this great flood in the Tiber. Both of them had, kind of plunged into the water. And what happened was that Caesar had a sudden fit, convulsions. He had that problem. He had fits. Okay. And, he had these convulsions. He was drowning. And then I swam into rescue him, and I brought him out, and he was shivering like a baby. Okay. And he says, this is the weakling. Actually, Caesar is an extremely weak person. See, in Rome, it was that, strength was supposed to be, your physical strength was supposed to be a mark of your capabilities, your every other capability as a ruler, and so on. Why is Cassius funny, Afra? You like Cassius?
No, ma'am. He's kind of triggering Brutus into it. So
actually,
he's using the situation. Yes, ma'am.
He's a smart man. Now on, you people could call somebody like that Cassius. He's a big Cassius. Okay. So see, so he says, so he is linking Caesar's physical illness to the fact that, he is not fit to be a ruler. That should not be allowed. Okay. Now that is actually a very prejudiced view. Okay. Anyway, so now Brutus says there's another shout, and he's like, I have a feeling that there is more honors being heaped on Caesar. Okay. And then Cassius says, why is it that, he is striding over all of Rome like a colossus? Colossus is a giant figure. Okay. It's actually a sculpture. Okay. And, we are, like tiny mortals peeping out from under his legs, looking for protection. And, he just behaves like he's above and better than all of us. That is not good. That is not safe. And he says, why should Caesar's name be shouted out louder than that of Brutus? Okay, why can't we be shouting out Brutus's name? Okay, and he says, Brutus is as powerful a name as is Caesar in the eyes of the public. Okay, yes. And he says, by the time it is line 150, okay, age thou art shamed. Rome, thou hadst lost the breed of noble bloods, but, when went there by an age since the great flood, but it was famed with more than with one man. When could they say, till now, that talked of Rome, that her wide walks encompassed but one man? So here also effectively what Cassius is talking about is, he's rebelling against the cult of the personality. Okay. So, his dislike, his personal dislike of Caesar notwithstanding, he is also protesting against the personality cult that Rome seems to be falling for. Okay. And this, see, personality cult is something that wins elections even today, right? Have you seen many elections being fought and won in the name of ideology? It's always, the face. That is why it is important to show a face. That is why people often declare their prime ministerial, presidential, constituency candidacies much in advance, so that the campaign has a face. Understand? So here, these are all very important insights into public behavior. Yes. And continuing there itself, now it is Rome indeed, and room enough when when there is in it but only one man. Oh, you and I have heard our fathers say there was a Brutus once that would have brooked the eternal devil to keep his state in Rome as easily as a king. Okay, so he talks about another person, another Brutus who existed in history. Okay. Who was a republican through and through, and he would have fought the forces of monarchy and kept them away from the Republic of Rome. Okay. Now, Brutus again has become very amenable. Okay. And he says, what you have said, I will consider. I will think about what you have said. And, anyway, you should hear one thing from me before you go. Now, this is line 172. Brutus had rather be a villager than to repute himself a son of Rome, as this lay upon, like, I would rather be a villager than be a citizen of Rome if, these hard conditions continue forever, or continue under the circumstances. So you see, gradually, Cassius has brought Brutus under his sway, under his influence, from just having a niggling worry, not being able to place his finger on what was concerning him. Now, Brutus has a very good idea, a very clear picture of what exactly is troubling him. And that is the autocratic behavior of Julius Caesar. And what it can, have the effect, what effect it can have on Rome. Yeah, the line 172 is, Brutus had rather be a villager than to repute himself a son of Rome under these hard conditions as this time is like to lay upon us. So he says, I would rather be a villager, I would rather be a country bumpkin, bumpkin, than be a citizen of Rome if, Rome is going to be ruled over by a dictator, if Rome is no longer going to be a republic. So see, the idea of, seeing Rome as a monarchy is repellent. It is, repulsive for Brutus. Okay. Now, Cassius says, I am glad that my weak words have struck but this much show of fire from Brutus. So see, he is now convinced of his abilities, and he says, I'm very happy that my ineffective words have helped you, show so much of fire, the fire that lies within. Okay. And see, Cassius says, as the Brutus says the games are done and Caesar is returning, and immediately Cassius says, when you see Casca, just pull him aside, okay, and he will tell you about all that might have happened today. Okay, so like I told you, Cassius and Casca are very central to the narrative of the rebellion. So Brutus says, I will do so. I will call Casca and I will ask him. And he says, look, Cassius, Caesar is looking so angry. Okay, and Calpurnia is looking very pale and upset. Cicero is looking rather suspicious. Wonder what the matter is. And Cassius says, Casca will tell you everything. Don't worry about us. And Caesar, now the scene shifts to Caesar. Caesar says, Antonius. And Antonius is like Caesar. He says, let me, this is line 192, Caesar says, and this is very important in terms of character sketch. Let me have men about me that are fat, sleek-headed men and such as sleep-o-nights. Yon Cassius has a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous. Okay, this is something that even I draw consolation from. So Caesar says, you surround me with men who are fat, who like pleasure and who like happy things. Okay, who sleep at nights. That man Cassius, he has a lean, hungry look about him. That man thinks too much. And such men are dangerous. So, see, the thinking man is dangerous because sometimes he might think and hit upon the truth. I mean, he doesn't say that, I'm saying that. Understand? So, this is very important. Caesar also is equally suspicious of Cassius because he imagines that Cassius is a thinking man. Okay, and such men are dangerous because of their ability to incite others. INCITE, incite others. Okay, and Antony says, "Oh, fear him not, Caesar. He is not dangerous." Okay, then Caesar says, "No, I wish he were fatter." But he says, "I'm not afraid of him." Okay, but he says, I don't know who I should, I don't think I would be afraid of anybody for that matter. So he says, I just want to avoid that, skinny Cassius. He reads too much. He's a great observer and he looks through the actions of men. So here, Caesar himself is justifying the fears that Cassius has about Caesar. Think about it. And if you ever want to write a character sketch of Cassius, you could probably start off by saying that Cassius is one of the principal instigators of the rebellion against Caesar, and his primary aim seems to be the preservation of the Roman Republic. But above that, when viewed through the eyes of his enemy Caesar, we find that there is much of merit, that is of merit.
Ma'am, can you repeat it once more? Excuse me.
Repeat what once more?
The character set of principal instigator of.
Okay, fine. So we're going to start from the beginning. Okay, now before we go any further, because we are going to do this entire play together, we should understand that I find it very difficult to repeat the exact same words. I will only be repeating approximations of the same thing.
Sure.
Okay. So, yes, about Cassius, yes. So when you're writing a character sketch of Cassius, what you should remember is that, you can probably start off by saying that Cassius was one of the principal instigators of the rebellion against Julius Caesar, and this might have come from his ardent desire to, keep or preserve preserve Rome as a republic. But at the same time, there was also an intense personal dislike that he had towards Julius Caesar. Now, keeping this in mind, don't say that, but it must be considered that the true picture of Cassius emerges through the eyes of his enemy as Caesar talks about Cassius as a dangerous man on account of his ability to think. Caesar goes on to observe that Cassius reads a lot. Okay, he's a great reader. He's a great observer of human beings, and he is able to gauge, Gauge, gauge the intentions of his fellow beings. Okay, and he seems to be rather Spartan. Spartan, okay, Spartan, which means austere. He seems to be rather Spartan in his tastes because he does not love plays, drama. He does not love plays. He does not listen to music, and he hardly smiles, and smiles in a way that conveys a certain significance. Okay, that conveys that he knows the truth of everything that happens around him and he is mocking it. Okay, so he has a rather unsettling smile. Okay, when people have too much of knowledge, they tend to smile in a way that makes other people rather uncomfortable, because they are like, what do they know about me? What do they know about me? That kind of a thing. I don't know how many of you have read P.G. Wodehouse. Have you read P.G. Wodehouse? Anybody?
No, ma'am.
Is that yes or no, Rima? I didn't hear you.
It was a no, ma'am. No.
Okay. In P.G. Woodhouse, he's a tremendously funny writer. When this exam is over, please go read him. Hmm? Tremendously funny writer, and he says that in one of his books he says, I know a man who used to just stand by the side of a lane, and when there was somebody passing by, he would just look at them and say, I know your secret. Immediately the person would look startled and take out 10 pounds and give it to him. Okay, so you get it, right? So that way, when people, when you think that people know something or know a lot, their smile can be rather unsettling. Anyway, coming back to it. Okay. So he says that that is Caesar says that Cassius seldom smiled, and and not only that, he was not prone to be, or he was not amused by anything for that matter. And he says, yes, like Charles Magnuson, correct, good one. Okay. So it was very difficult to get him to smile at anything. And he says that these men such as Cassius are never comfortable when they meet one who is greater than them. See, here you see that not only does Caesar make an astute, A-S-T-U-T-E, okay, make an astute observation about Cassius, he also lets us have a glimpse of his own ego when he says this. See, that is line 107, 8, 207 or 8 or something, where he says that such men as he be never at heart's ease whilst they behold a greater than themselves, and therefore are very dangerous. This is the second time that this man, Caesar, calls Cassius dangerous. Yeah. Okay. And this is the third time that the word dangerous is being used in the context of Cassius, because Caesar says it twice and Antony says it once. Anyway, so he says, I rather tell thee what is to be feared than what I fear, for always I am Caesar. Okay, so he says, I am not telling you what I am afraid of. I am telling you what should be afraid of. Okay, what one should be afraid of, not what I am afraid of, because I am always Caesar. Okay, so he says, come to my right hand, for this ear is deaf. So he's also deaf in one ear. And he says, tell me what you truly think of Cassius. And they both go away like that. Okay. Now, Casca. Okay, that is, Caesar and Antony and everybody go. Casca stands there. And remember, Cassius tells Brutus to catch hold of Casca and ask him the details of the day. Okay. So Casca says, yes, you pulled me. What is the matter? And Brutus says, why does Caesar look so sad? So he says, you were right there, weren't you? He says, then why would I ask you why Caesar is sad? Right? See, this is the way how you don't answer a question that you don't want to answer. You should ask another question instead. So Casca says, why? There was a crown that was offered to him, that is 220. There was a crown that was offered to him, but he pushed it with the back of his hand. And then the people all began shouting. Then Brutus says, and why was the second crowd noise for? And Caesar says, he was offered again. And again he pushed it away. Then Cassius finally says, they shouted thrice. What was the third cry for? Casca says, for the same reason. So see, the crown was brought once, he pushed it back twice, pushed it back thrice, he pushed it back. So all the 3 times the crowd was cheering his decision. Okay. So Brutus, was the crown offered him thrice? Casca says, yes, and every time, he pushed it away, but each push was gentler than the first push. Like first it was take it away, and it was take it away. No, it's okay. See, that kind of a thing. And he says, every time the honest neighbors all shouted. So Cassius says, okay, so who gave him the crown? And Casca says, Antony. Okay, this is like, you people. Suppose I am like, okay, we need a class rep. And immediately, roll number 2 is like, roll number 3 is good, ma'am. And I'm like, oh, really? And roll number 3 is like, no, it is okay. And then again, it's like, roll number 2 says 3 is good, ma'am. No, it's okay. Roll number 3 is, no, it's okay. And then I'm like, okay, enna pinna vera arigina. Okay, and 3 actually wanted to be the class rep. Okay, and 2 was 3's best friend. This is how it happens. Okay, so who offered the crown? Antony. Then Brutus says, tell us the manner of it. Tell us how it happened. Okay, so Casca says, well, it was mere foolishness. Okay, that I can tell you, because Mark Antony offered him a crown. It was not a crown exactly. It was just, one of those makeshift things. Okay, the small coronets kind of a thing. And, he brought it to him once, but Caesar put it by. Okay, then again it was offered. Again he put it by. And each time, as I told you, the third time, when it was the second time when it was offered, his fingers were actually sticking to the coronet. It's like venda, but he was, kind of, no, it's okay, kind of a thing. Okay, and then the third time when it was offered, he refused it, and the people again hooted and howled and cheered him, and their mouths were open and their breaths were so stinky that Caesar refused the crown, that because of the smell of their breath itself, Caesar choked and fainted and fell down. And he says, Casca says, I couldn't laugh because I was scared of opening my mouth and receiving all that bad breath. Okay, there was no
Shakespearean
toothpaste.
crowd generally doesn't brush their teeth. Like we can
I
text in
think
Korean
so. That is the whole problem. They never even used to take bath all that often. So, and I think cattle, people, everybody used to live together. Have you heard of the statement, throwing the baby out with the bath water?
No.
There is a phrase like that, throwing the baby out with the bath water. അതായത് ഇപ്പോൾ in Malayalam it is, നമ്മൾ ഒരു കാര്യം നേരെ ചൊവ്വേ കേൾക്കുകയും മനസ്സിലാക്കാതെ അങ്ങോട്ട് എടുത്ത് ചാടി ആക്ഷൻ എടുക്കുക. അതിനാണ് പറയുന്നത്. Okay, for example, you come to me or I come to you straight and say, children, da avade, and immediately നിങ്ങൾ ബാഗും ബുക്കും എല്ലാം എടുത്തുകൊണ്ട് വീട്ടിലേക്ക് ഒറ്റ പോകും. And I'm like, I was just going to say, avade class മാറ്റി അങ്ങോട്ട് പോയിരിക്കും. Okay, it's like that. So throwing the baby out with the bath water came because in England, in most of these cold countries actually, what would happen was that once a month, I hope to God and pray, once in a women of the house of boil water, and they would put it in a tub. Okay, without the tub was not the kind of tub you have now. It was just water in a tub, big tub. And then first the senior most men will take a bath in that water, then the junior most men, then the children, then the women, and finally the babies. And finally the water would be so dirty that it was possible that couple of children might have been swimming around in it and nobody noticed. That was how it was. And I'm not making this up, this is true. So when they used to, kind of append the tub, the baby would be coming out with the bath water. So marriage with appealengi, this could happen. Understand? This was what. So so these the crowd in was had such stinking breath that Caesar fell down, and he had his fits. He foamed at the mouth and was speechless. And Brutus says very likely he had the falling sickness, convulsions. Okay, and Cassius, Brutus says he has the falling sickness, and Cassius immediately says it is not him who has the falling sickness, it is us. We are the ones, you, I, and this honest Casca, we are the ones who have the falling sickness. And Casca is like, I don't know what you mean by that, because Casca is a very practical man. He's a very to the point man. That is why Cassius called him sour. He says when he tells Brutus, when Casca passes by, pluck him by the sleeve, and he will tell you in his sour fashion what happened, kind of a thing. So where was I? Yeah. So Casca says, I don't know what you mean, but Caesar fell down, and all these terrible people, all these rabble, if they hadn't kind of cheered his decision to refuse the crown, then according as he pleased and displeased them, as they used to do the players in the theater, then I am no true man. So he says, it was like Caesar was putting up a performance and these people were his audience. It all seemed like that, and finally the audience was writing the script. It was all very, very confusing, but I know this much. This is all I know. And Brutus says, what did he say when he regained consciousness? Then he says, when he collapsed, Casca says, when he collapsed, when he understood that people were very happy that he refused the crown, he opened his cloak, he opened his shirt doublet and offered them his throat to cut. And he's like, if I were, a man, if I were one of the common people, I would have taken up that offer and cut his throat for all you know. Okay, and he says, I might, go to hell among the rogues, and so he fell. When he came to, he said, if he had done anything to offend them, if he had, done anything, he wanted the people to think that it was his weakness. Okay, so see, he desired their worships. This is 272. He desired their worships to think it was his infirmity. 3 or 4 wenches means women, where I stood, cried, alas, good soul, and forgave him with all their hearts. But there's no heed to be taken of them. If Caesar had stabbed their mothers, they would have done no less. So see, again, you see the fickle crowd. Okay, so here you have, Caesar, who refused the crown, and the people cheered him, and he fell down, with all the shock of all of this, and he had convulsions. When he looked at them and said, if I have done anything wrong, I want you to forgive me. And immediately the crowd is all magnanimous, and there are people who are weeping for him and saying he is such a wonderful soul. And Casca says he could have killed their mothers at that point of time, and they would not have had a problem. Understand? So you see, this is the impact that Caesar had on the people. And Brutus says, and he came back sad after that. And Casca says, yes. Did Cicero say anything? And Casca said, yes. He spoke Greek. Understand? Because Cicero is this extremely learned orator kind of a person. Okay. So what did Cicero say? Cicero said Greek. And Cassius says, what did he say in Greek? He says, nay, and I tell you that I'll never look you in the face again. But those that understood him smiled at one another and shook their heads. For mine own part, it was Greek to me. See, again, there is a play on the word Greek. When something is Greek to you, it is strange. Okay, you don't understand it. So Casca says, if I understood it, I would have told you something. As far as I was concerned, it was all Greek to me. There were 3-4 people who understood him, who were looking at each other and smiling. That's all I know. And then he says, I have some more news for you. Marullus and Flavius have been killed for pulling down the decorations of Caesar's images. So those 2 people we saw in the beginning are now dead. So he says, fare you well. There was more stupidity, foolery. If I could remember it, I would tell you. Then Cassius says, will you eat with me today, Casca? And Casca says, no, I have other plans. I have been promised elsewhere. Then Cassius says, will you eat with me tomorrow? And Cassius says, sure. If I am alive and you can remember, then, and your dinner is good. So next time anybody calls you for dinner, you tell them that. If I can remember, if your dinner is any good, if you can remember, I am alive and your food is any good, I will come. That way nobody will ever invite you. And then, Casca says, okay, bye. And everybody says, okay, bye. And then Brutus talks about Casca. Again, this is a point about Casca's character, where he says, such a blunt fellow, he just says it to the face. And he says, he was very sharp when we went to school. And Cassius says, he is just as sharp even now if you give him any kind of an honorable job to do. See, the word honorable. And he says, generally he's just acting like this because it is more comfortable to behave that, to pretend that you are lazy or tardy. And this rudeness is a source to his good wit. His rudeness, because he is rude, people are like, oh, he is just, that is how he is, and they will never mind him, So he is allowed to get away with his rudeness. Understand? See, if you are very nice and very kind, and then you see something terrible happening, and you comment on that, people will be like, Itraingalam, she was such a nice person. Now why is she behaving like this? But you have always been very rude and blunt, and you tell something to their face, they will be like, well, you know what, she's like that, but she's saying the truth only, no problem. And they will accept it. So this is what is, meant by be true to yourself. Anyway, so Brutus says, for the time being, I will leave you. Tomorrow, if you have time, please speak to me. See, earlier it was Cassius who approached Brutus. Now it is Brutus who seeks Cassius's company. So he says, tomorrow, please speak to me. I will come home to you, or if you can, you come home to me and I will wait for you. And Cassius says, I will do so. Till then, think of the world. That is, think about the fact that you have a higher purpose. There is a reason why, you are you. And, Brutus leaves, and then there is a soliloquy. See, a soliloquy is where the character is alone on stage and, he is talking aloud so that he can share his innermost thoughts with the audience, so that when the plot unfolds on stage, the audience is in know of or is in knowledge of the motives of the character. Do you
Romantic
want me to
irony.
repeat it or something?
No, ma'am. Romantic irony. Is that not a thing?
Dramatic irony. Yeah.
I don't know, but then if, in
Dramatic monologue, you mean?
this little book, in the other little book, it was
Ah,
written that when we know, when with soliloquy, we do know
ah,
the
ah,
innermost
ah.
feelings of the
Yes, yes.
character, and then we get to know what is going to happen, but then the characters don't. So that's a
Yeah.
dramatic irony.
That is dramatic irony, of course. Where the audience is in the knowledge of the motives of the character, of one character, and none of the others. The characters are not not part of that knowledge. Then it imbues the scene with a sense of dramatic irony. That is true. I thought you were saying that this is called dramatic irony. That it is. Okay. So yes. Now Brutus leaves, and there is this Soliloquy. So Brutus, Cassius says, that is line 311. Well, Brutus, thou art noble, yet I see thy honorable metal may be wrought, from that it is disposed. Therefore, it is meet that noble minds keep ever with their likes. For who so firm that cannot be seduced? Caesar doth bear me hard, but he loves Brutus. If I were Brutus now and he were Cassius, he should not humor me. I will this night in several hands in at his windows throw, as if they came from several citizens, writings all tending to the great opinion that Rome holds of his name, wherein obscurely Caesar's ambition shall be glanced at. And after this, let Caesar seat him sure, for we will shake him, or worse days endure. Okay, so he says that Brutus, you are a very noble man, but you should stick to noble people. Okay, that should be the company you keep. Because if you stick to people who are not noble, like me, we will be able to influence you and change your mind, just as I have managed to do so now. See, that is why they say you should keep good company. You could be a wonderful human being, but if you keep terrible company, your goodness is all gone to waste. And he says, if I were, Brutus, and if you were Cassius, yeah, exactly. Then he says, I would not, he should not humor me. So he says, if Cassius were Brutus and Brutus were Cassius, the one should not humor the other. And he says, that Caesar, does not like Cassius, but he loves Brutus. So see that astute observation that Caesar made about, Cassius, that he is a very, very close observer of human beings. That is very true. Okay, so Cassius says, Caesar does not like me, but he loves Brutus. So he says, tonight I will, in several hands, in several handwritings, write a lot of these notes and toss them into, Brutus's house, where, I will say that I'm from, I'm different people, and all of us will talk about the ambitiousness of Caesar, and talk about how, Brutus should take up greater responsibilities. Okay. And then he says, after this, let Caesar seat him for sure, for we will shake him. So let Caesar sit on the, sit in the seat of power, because we will one day unseat him. We will shake him, or we will suffer for it. We are ready to die. So this is the purpose with which Cassius has charged himself. Understand that he will, in one day, one way or the other, unseat Caesar, or he will die in this attempt. That brings us to the end of Act 1, Scene 2. Okay, shall we stop here for today? Is that too much of info? No, you can tell me.
I don't know, ma'am.
Ma'am, I think
We could go on.
we
I don't
could
know.
go on, I guess, ma'am.
There's only one more scene in this act. Shall we just go on?
Yes, ma'am. We'll
Yes,
just
ma'am.
finish it up, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Administration, if you guys are still up for it, we will go on.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am,
So,
one doubt.
yeah.
Ma'am, can you explain the line 315? Thy honorable metal may be wrought.
One second.
The same thing. The same thing. Last.
Yes, I know the last line, right? Yeah. So, he says that, your metal, your capabilities might be, fashioned from that which it is derived from. See, metal, again, the word metal is being played with. It could mean that, material. Okay, that is it. Therefore, it is meet that noble minds. So, see, your honorable metal, your honorable behavior, or your capacity for honor may be shaped from that which it is taken. So, he says, you are in and out steeped in honor. So, that is why you are noble. Do you get that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's go. I'm just thinking about that. There was a reference earlier to metal. Yes. See, earlier, remember where Cassius says that
Yes,
I wish
ma'am.
that you could see yourself. And he says, I don't have eyes to do that. I can only see myself being reflected of something or the other. So this reference to metal here is also the reference to metal. Okay, in the sense that, see, metal is something that is very strong. It is hard, right? But when you heat it with fire, what happens is that it will become soft. It will lend itself to being molded. So that is what Cassius says here. Understand? So
Okay,
he
ma'am.
says that you are made of great metal. You have great merit. Metal also means merit. Okay, you are noble because you have great merit or metal. But the metal that you are made of can be forged in the fires of passion, and I can fashion you in any way that I like.
Okay, ma'am.
So it is that kind of an imagery. See, one more thing that we should look into is that the audience of Shakespeare was not always nobility. It was also the people who stood in the pits. Okay, so these are all references that they would understand. Blacksmiths would understand. Cobblers would understand. See, so that is
Yes,
why.
ma'am.
Ah, right. So is that clear to you now?
Yes, ma'am. More clear.
Anybody has any doubts anywhere here now?
Ma'am, we saw the word metal just before, right? Like when Brutus said, "What a blunt fellow is this grown to be." He was a quick metal.
Yes, that is it. He was a quick metal. He was very sharp when he was in school, and Cassius is he's still sharp if you give him a noble job to do, an honorable job to do. Good. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes,
That is
ma'am.
what I was
Okay.
thinking.
Ah,
Anyway, and remember that in the crowd, the soothsayer had said, beware the Ides of March. Okay. Now we come to Act 1, Scene 3. Okay. And by now, what has happened is that a month has passed since that eventful day where the festival of Lupercal was held. And now it is the Ides of March. And there is a terrible storm going on in Rome. Okay, a huge storm is going on, and Casca meets Cicero on the streets of Rome and tells him all the things and sights that he has seen. See, this is also meant to help convey to the audience the portents. Portents, portents, which means omen. Portent, which is omen. Refer to the comment section, please. Okay. Refers to the portents or the omens, because Elizabethans were great believers in portents or in omens. Okay, so this would kind of appeal to their sense of magic and the supernatural. And supernatural was also a very significant part of the narrative of Shakespeare. Like you have the witches in Macbeth. Okay, you have the ghost of Hamlet's father who appears in Hamlet. You have the ghost of Banquo that appears in Macbeth. Okay, and similarly, you have these terrible scenes that come about. So Cicero says, "Good evening, Casca. Brought you Caesar home. Why are you breathless and why do you stare so?" So, Casca is completely breathless and looking scared. And Casca says, "Aren't you, kind of moved or influenced by everything that you're seeing around you?" Okay. And he tells him, "Oh, Cicero, I have seen storms, where the winds, the annoyed, the angry winds have pulled up huge oak trees. Okay. I have seen the ambitious ocean that rages and swells and foams and everything." He says, but till tonight, I have never seen this a storm that rained fire. Okay, a storm that rained fire. Okay, and he said there must be some kind of a war going on in heaven, or the gods are angry with the earth, and they are so angry that they are hell bent on destroying the earth. Okay, so what has Casca seen? He has seen hellfire raining down upon earth, and it seemed as though the gods are, fighting with each other in heaven, or they are so angered by the actions of man that they have decided to destroy the earth. And Cicero says, "Have you seen anything more glorious?" Okay. And Casca, says, "A common slave," that is some must be a slave who is known to all of them, held up his left hand, which was burning like 20 torches, burning with the brightness of 20 torches, and yet his hand was unburned. Okay. So there was flame. His hand was engulfed in flames, but it wasn't burnt. Okay. And then he says, "Against the Capitol, against the one of the main buildings, I met a lion who looked at me and went angrily, went very sulkily by, without troubling me, without disturbing me." Okay. And then he says, "There were, a ghastly heap of 100 women who transformed with their fear. They say that, they saw men all in fire walk up and down the streets. And yesterday, a bird of the night, which is the owl, and yesterday the bird of night did sit even at noonday upon the marketplace, hooting and shrieking." Now, the owl was also something of a great fascination for the Elizabethans, because it was considered to be a bird of great wisdom. At the same time, it was a very powerful omen. And the owl hooting in the daytime was considered to be a very ill omen. Okay, so he says, there were these, hundreds of women who swore that, they saw these men completely bathed in flames walking by. And even yesterday in the marketplace, in the middle of the day, the owl was sitting and shrieking and hooting. And he says, when all of these omens come together, let not anybody say that, "Oh, all this is natural, there is no big deal," because I believe in omens and what they point to. So Casca says, "I know what these omens mean. It is something terrible, and I know what it is leading to." And Cicero says, "Yes, it is a very strange time, but people interpret these things in their own fashion. Okay, and sometimes it may have nothing to do with the actual thing." And he says, "Does Caesar come to the capital, the parliament, the meeting place, the seat of governance tomorrow?" And Casca says, "Yes, he is coming. For he told Antony to send word to you that he will be there tomorrow." And Cicero says, "Okay, good night then, Casca. This, disturbed sky, this angry sky, we should not walk in." So see, this, raining hellfire, it could also mean that there was a meteorite shower. And meteors were also considered to be comets. Comets were also considered to be an ill omen by the Elizabethans. In fact, almost everything was considered to be an ill omen by the Elizabethans. You can't do anything about it. And this, see what Cicero says is very important. That when Casca says that all of these bad omens coming together, they have to point at something bad. Let nobody say that there is a logical reason to it. There is nothing like that. This is something terrible is going to happen. And Cicero says, you never know, because everybody interprets things according to what they want. You might have had a dream, and when you wake up, you are like, that was a terrible dream. And then you are like, but there could be something positive in it. And immediately you will find something positive in it. Excuse me. Immediately you will find something positive in it. Understand? Now, this, interpretation of omens and dreams as one deems fit or right is very, very important in the context of the dream that Calpurnia sees. Okay, so I'm going to ask you people to refer that to me when I come to that point. Okay, so there are two things I need you to ask me. What are the two things?
One, I guess,
Fickleness.
Fickle-mindedness of
Fickle mindedness, yes. And the other is?
omens.
Yes. Interpretation of omens and dreams. So anyway, so Cicero says this is not the night sky that we should be walking under. And then, everybody goes away. Casca says, bye, Cicero, and they go. And Cassius comes into the scene. And Cassius asks, who is there? And Casca says, a Roman. See, here you understand where the loyalties of Casca lie. The loyalties of Casca lie with the Republic than with any human being. Understand? So he is also a Republican, and he shares that fear of autocracy that Cassius also has with regard to Caesar. So Cassius says, Casca, by your voice. He's like, I identified you are Casca. Then Casca says, oh, Cassius, your ear is very good. Then Cassius says, this is a very wonderful night for honest men. Okay. So anyway, Casca says, why is it that, the gods are so angry? And Cassius says, those that have known, this is line 45 in this, those that have known the earth so full of faults, for my part, I have walked about the streets, submitting me unto the perilous night, and thus unbraced Casca, as you see, have bared my bosom to the thunderstone. And when the cross blue lightning seemed to open the breast of heaven, I did present myself even in the aim and very flash of it. Okay, so Casca says, why are the gods so angry? And Cassius says, those have known the earth so full of faults. Okay, so he says, we do not know why the gods are so angry, but I, on the other hand, have been walking about the streets with my shirt completely open, exposing myself to the elements, challenging the heavens to strike me down, and nothing has happened to me. So see, he is trying to prove his purpose. He is trying to show that his purpose has been blessed by the gods themselves. So that's why Casca asks, why did you tempt the heavens so much? Okay, and Cassius says, you are dull, Casca, and those sparks of life, that should be there in a Roman, you don't have. You don't have that fervor of rebellion. You don't have that passion towards your country. That is your problem. Or he says, either you don't have it or you don't use it. That is line 59 onwards. You look pale and gaze and put on fear and cast yourself in wonder to see the strange impatience of the heavens. But if you would consider the true cause, why all these fires, why all these gliding ghosts, why birds and beasts from quality and kind, why old men, fools and children calculate, why all these things change from their ordinance, their natures and performed faculties to monstrous quality, why you shall find that heaven hath infused them with these spirits to make them instruments of fear and warning unto some monstrous state. Most like, now could I, Casca, name thee to a man most like this dangerous, dreadful night that thunders, lightens, opens graves and roars as doth the lion in the Capitol. A man no mightier than thyself or me in personal action, yet prodigious grown and fearful as these strange eruptions are. Okay, so Cassius says, you are dull, or you don't have or you don't show the spark and the patriotism that a true Republican should. Okay, and he says, look around you. What is all of these? What are all these omens talking about? They are all pointing to the one man who is trying to tower above all of us, who's trying to tower above all of us, but is just the same as you and me. There is nothing spectacular. There is nothing special about him. All these omens are warning us about that man. So Cassius is also a very, very, influential, let's say he can turn the minds of the people. He's a very influential conversationalist. Okay, he can use any situation to his advantage. Okay, there was a comet passing by, or there was a meteorite shower. There was some sightly scenes seen around the capital, and what does he do? He takes all of that and changes it into an accusation against Caesar. That's what he does. And Casca says, it's Caesar you mean, is it not, Cassius? And Cassius says, let it be who it is. See, again, he's not committing. He says, let it be who it is, for Romans now have thews and limbs like to their ancestors. Thews is muscles, like their ancestors. But woe the while our fathers' minds are dead, and we are governed with other mother spirits. Our yoke and sufferance show us womanish. You have to remember that in Shakespeare's times, all this was not seen as sexist. Now it is seen as sexist. So he says, let it be anybody, but you should understand that we Romans of today have the muscles and the bodies of our ancestors, but we don't have the minds of our fathers. Those bright minds, those intelligent minds, they are dead. Now we have some other misbegotten minds. Okay, and the way we are suffering and the way we are being oppressed and being allowed, when we are allowing ourselves to be oppressed, all of this shows that we have become womanish. We are no longer a masculine race of people. And Casca says, yes, tomorrow all the senators were saying that they are going to crown Caesar the king. Okay, and he will wear his crown by sea and land in every place save here in Italy. So, except for here in Rome, Caesar will be the king of all the other Roman parts of all the other places under Roman oppression. I don't think they even realized that women were oppressed in the Elizabethan times. They just thought that they loved to wear corsets and faint when the blood supply was cut off. That is it. Okay. So Cassius says, I know where I will wear this dagger then. So, Cassius takes out his knife and says, I know where I will be, wearing this dagger. It will be in my heart. Okay. Cassius from bondage will deliver Cassius. So he says, Cassius will free Cassius from this bondage if crowned or dominion myself. Okay. And see, this is the height of passion that Cassius.
The last few seconds, your voice cracked, like it was blood.
Oh. Okay. Till where did you guys hear?
About Cassius freeing himself. Cassius freeing himself, wearing the
dagger in his heart.
Yes. So see, when Casca tells him that Caesar is going to be tomorrow most likely crowned the king of all of Roman dominions except for Italy, Cassius becomes very, very let's say impassioned. Okay, he's overcome with fervor and anger, and he says that then this dagger that I hold here, I know where I will wear it. He says, I will stab myself in the heart with it, and I will free myself from this bondage. This bondage, there are again two meanings. One, the bondage of the body and the soul, and the other is being in servitude of Caesar, being in bondage with Caesar. Okay, under Caesar. So yeah, that is what he says. Because he says that therein, ye gods, you make the weak most strong. Therein, ye gods, you tyrants do defeat. Nor stony tower, nor walls of beaten brass, nor airless dungeon, nor strong links of iron can be retentive to the strength of spirit. Okay, so he says that I will free myself by from this bondage of the body, from this servitude to Caesar, by killing myself. Because he says, if we are dead, if we are no longer alive, what will happen is that is how you defeat dictators. See, a dictator should have somebody to rule over. If there is nobody to rule over, what is the point of being a dictator? Okay, so he says, this is how the gods defeat dictators. Okay, because you cannot imprison the human spirit in prisons, in towers, you cannot tie it down, you cannot do anything to the human spirit. So that is what I'm going to free my spirit from the bondage of this body and from servitude to Caesar. And he says, But life, being weary of these worldly bars, never lacks power to dismiss itself. If I know this, know all the world besides, that part of tyranny that I do bear, I can shake off at pleasure. So he says only the body, has to suffer. So if I free myself from that bondage, then my body doesn't have to suffer. My mind and my spirit also don't have to suffer. And he says, the best part about that tyranny will be that I can free myself of this tyranny, of this oppression whenever I feel like. Okay. So Casca says, even I can. Okay. And he says, so every man, every independent man in this land has the ability to free himself of this captivity. See, in Rome, what would happen was that, people were allowed, as I think that it is one of the earliest democracies. And what used to happen there was, only the men had voting rights. They could elect. Rome was a republic because people would elect or nominate human beings who could govern over them. Okay, and in that, slaves were not allowed to vote. Women were also not allowed to vote. Okay, so that is why it is said every bondman in his own hand bears, every slave, okay, in his own hand bears the power to cancel his captivity. Okay, so Casca says, just like you say that you can free your body from captivity, even slaves can do the same thing, but they don't. Cassius, why should Caesar be a tyrant then? Poor man. I know he would not be a wolf, but that he sees the Romans are but sheep. He were no lion, were not Romans hinds, those that with haste will make a mighty fire, behind it with weak straws. What trash is Rome, what rubbish and what offal, when it serves for the base matter to illuminate so vile a thing as Caesar. O grief, where hast thou led me? Perhaps speak this before a willing bondman. Then I know my answer must be made, but I am armed and dangers to me are indifferent. Very, very important. Okay, then he says, why should Caesar be a dictator then? Because see, first Cassius says, I will free myself of the bondage of this body. And then Casca says, like that even slaves can kill themselves and be free of their captivity. What is the difference? What is the great thing about it? And then Cassius says, so Caesar is not a tyrant. Caesar is not a dictator. It is we who are weak. He says Caesar is not a wolf. We are sheep. That is the problem. It is our attitude, not his attitude. Okay. He says Caesar would not be a lion if we were not hinds, deer. You understand? So see, what he's trying to say is that the people are the ones who make their dictators. We select our own oppressors. Understand? You make your own prisons. That is very true. So he says those who are in a great hurry, will make a huge fire, and they will just dump straws in it. See, there are two ways of making a fire. One, that is made out of strong wood that burns beautifully and nice and smokelessly and so on. The other is the kind of fire that you get together with trash and you just set it on fire and it just burns. It is smoky, smelly, murky, and so on. He says, we Romans, we have no quality, we have no merit, we have nothing like that. So we just put together some trash and, we are kind of burning and celebrating the reflection of Caesar that emerges in that fire, in the light of that fire. So he says, where am I speaking? I am speaking to a willing slave. See again, now here Cassius is attempting to prick the ego of Casca, just as he had done with Brutus. Okay, so who am I speaking to? I am speaking to a most willing, a voluntary slave. At least other slaves were not volunteering to be slaves, the real slaves. You are a voluntary slave. Then he says, but anyway, I have my answer. I am armed, and so no other dangers matter to me. I have my knife. I know what to do with it. So none of these other dangers matter to me. And Casca says, you speak to Casca, and to such a man that is no fleering telltale. Hold my hand, be factious for redress of all these griefs, and I will set this foot of mine as far as who goes farthest. Usually Casca is riled up. He's like, don't say such things, okay? You are with Casca, and I will join hands with you, and we will march towards what we think is the best thing to do. So he says, be factious. Factious is active, okay? Be active for the redressal of all your sorrows, because I will go as far as it takes with you. So see, now Casca has also joined the group. Cassius says, that's a bargain made. Now you know, Casca, I have moved already some certain of the noblest minded Romans to undergo with me an enterprise of honorable, dangerous consequence. And I do know by this they stay for me in Pompey's porch, for now this fearful night there is no stir or walking in the streets, and the complexion of the element is fervorous like the work we have in hand, most bloody, fiery, and most terrible. So see, Cassius says, well, you see Casca waiting for me at Pompey's porch, Pompey's house, who died, remember? So in his house, the porch of his house, there are some noble-minded Romans who think like us and are waiting for us. And this is the best time to go there because of the climatic conditions, because of all this, omens that are raging. There is no one walking about on the streets. So we will reach there undetected. And he says, the work that we have in hand is like, is reflected in the atmosphere around us. It is fiery, it is bloody, and it is terrible. Okay. By then, Cinna comes in. Okay. Casca says, stand close, for here comes one in haste. And Cassius says, somebody's rushing by. And Cassius says, it's Cinna. I do know him by his gait. He is a friend. Cinna, where are you going? And Cinna says, to find you. And he says, who is there? Metellus Cimber? And then Cinna says, no, it is Casca. Okay. One incorporate to our attempts. Am I not stayed for Cinna? Okay, so Casca says that, he says, I am Casca, and he says, won't you make friends with me and won't you allow me to join your cause? And Cinna says, I am very glad. Okay, and he says, what a kind of a night is this? Okay, and some of us have seen some very strange sights. Then Cassius says, am I not being waited for? Are you guys not waiting for me? And Cinna says, yes, you are. Oh, Cassius, if you could but win noble Brutus to our party. He's like, if only you could get Brutus to support us, it would be wonderful. And Cassius says, relax, no problem. And he tells Cinna, take this paper and you lay it in the praetor's chair. Okay, that is praetor is the charge or the office held by Brutus at that point of time. He was a praetor, magistrate. Okay, so he says, you keep it on the magistrate's chair where Brutus can find it and throw this in his window. Remember, he promised that he will write in many, many different handwritings, letters that are supposedly from many of the nobles of Rome who say that, they are tired of the oppression of Caesar and that he is very ambitious and that Brutus must find a solution. So he says, throw this at his window, set this up with wax upon old Brutus's statue. Put this on the father Brutus's statue. All this, when it is done, come back to Pompey's porch where you shall find us. And he says, is Decius Brutus and Trebonius there? So there's another character by the name Decius Brutus. There's another person called Trebonius. So now the conspiracy, to our knowledge, has Casca, Cassius, Cinna, Decius Brutus, and Trebonius. Okay, and hopefully Brutus. Brutus has still not joined. He is still vacillating. He is still in two minds. So that is why, Cassius tells Cinna, take these three letters, put one on his chair, put one on his father's statue, throw one through his, window, and, let us see what happens. So Cinna says, all but Metellus Cimber, and he's gone to seek you at your house. So there's one more person in the conspiracy, Metellus Cimber. Well, I will hide, and so best. So he says, well, I'll go and distribute all these papers and come. And Cassius says, when that is done, come to Pompey's porch. Okay, so Pompey's theater, that's a structure that Pompey might have built. And then he tells Casca, come Casca, you and I will yet that day see Brutus at his house. Before the day, see Brutus at his house. 3 parts of him is ours already, and the man entire upon the next encounter yields him ours. So already Brutus is 3/4 ours. Now one day you and I will meet him together, and with that we will win him over completely. And Casca says, oh, he sits high in all the people's hearts. He is held in great esteem. And he says, that which would seem wrong in us will seem like alchemy in him. See, this is a beautiful way of saying it, okay? What will seem wrong in our hands will seem like gold or right in the face of Brutus. Understand? And it will change to virtue and to worthiness. So, see, what we have in mind, if we alone do it, it will seem like a terrible thing. But if there is Brutus who joins our cause, then even the wrong will be transformed to right. Alchemy is the science of turning, base metals into gold. Okay, that has never happened so far, but anyway, this is how people believe that science and the use of chemicals, etc., could change some of the base metals, iron and so on, into gold. Understand? So that is why Casca says he has a very high place in the hearts of people, and so what you and I we might be perceived as base. Those actions which you and I commit might be perceived as base or cheap or terrible, unforgivable. But Brutus, through his mere presence, can transform those things into something honorable. He can change it into virtue and worthiness. So Cassius says, him and his worth, our great need of him. You have right well conceited. Let us go, for it is after midnight, and ere day we will wake him and be sure of him. Okay, so he says, yes, that is true. He and his worth, he and his reputation, they are of great importance to us. You are absolutely right. So he says, let us go. It is midnight. We have to meet the others, and tomorrow we can wake him and be completely sure of him. Again, this awaken has two meanings. One, wake him from his slumber. Two, wake him from his figurative slumber. Understand? And then they both leave. Okay? So this brings us to the end of this act. So now you know that Cassius does not want to have Brutus onto his side for the righteousness of his cause, but for the fact that Brutus joining their cause will make the cause righteous in the eyes of the people. You get that? So that brings us to the end of this particular act. Do you have any questions for me?
No, ma'am, it's clear.
Did you understand everything?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, it's clear.
Yes,
Ma'am, it's
ma'am.
clear, ma'am.
Perfect. Okay, or do you have any other suggestions? Do you want me to not be so detailed or something?
No, ma'am, this
Oh, ma'am, this is great.
this is
It's
fine.
Fine, it's fine.
This is
No,
fine.
ma'am.
No, because personally, I would prefer going in this way because if I crunch it up, there might be a lot of nuances that I may not address. So this is what I would prefer, and I think that I hope you guys are writing down notes as I speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So it will be helpful that way. Now itself, we have answered a number of questions. The role of the crowd in Julius Caesar. We know about the character of what's his name, Cassius. We know about the character of Caesar. We know about the character of Brutus, Casca. Okay, so all of these things are set. We know about the Elizabethans' fascination for the supernatural. Okay, and how some of the let's say the pointers about Elizabethan society, where physical weakness is also seen as a sign of being a terrible human being. Okay, we know about the social conditions, the way that they looked upon women, and how weakness was characterized as being womanish. Okay, and now at the end of Act 1, what we have understood is that, I'm so sorry, we have understood is that they have moved one step closer towards that tragedy that is about to unfold. Okay, it is the Ides of March. And the Ides of March become very, very significant because this was what the soothsayer had also predicted. He said, Caesar, beware the Ides of March. Understand? So again, that element of supernatural comes in. Okay, so do you want me to go on? How is it?
Ma'am, I think we can go on. People are gonna see me, I don't know, but then I think we can go on.
Is there anybody who has difficulties of data
I
who
think we
feel that
can.
they're...
Ma'am.
Mhm. Does Cassius have personal? Of course, yes. Because, like, that is why he keeps saying that, we are the same, we have been together, we were soldiers together, all of that is there. And then why is it that he is being celebrated? Why is it that, they are honoring him? That is the question that he asks. Okay. And he says that, the man who is the same as us, he is trying to tower above us. He is a Colossus, and we are just, tiny figures who are scuttling about under his legs. Okay. And he says all of these omens are coming about because somebody who is as ordinary as us is trying to be better than us. That is why. Okay. Now I want to ask all the 52 people who are in class, does anybody have a data problem? You can write it in the chat box. That's absolutely no problem. Don't worry about anybody else. Okay. I'm going to count till 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, Act 2,
Ma'am, there's one.
TG has a problem.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Maybe because phone charges is also matter.
Okay, TG and everybody else.
I think
In the
everyone should
object,
openly say about it. Maybe anyone has anything.
if anybody has a problem, tell me. We can do it that way. I mean, we can always schedule 1.5. ഇപ്പോൾ തന്നെ നമ്മൾ 2 o'clock join ചെയ്തു. ഇപ്പോൾ 3:47 ആയി. So nearly 1.5 hours we finished an act. No, ഈ act is very small, so we can club it or അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. എന്നാ പിന്നെ shall we schedule this for another time then? Okay. Appare, I'm giving you 2 options. Option 1, we resume the class sometime at night, at maybe 8 o'clock or something. Okay. Or whenever is convenient for you guys. Or we schedule the class for another day. ഏതാണ് വേണ്ടത്?
Night or something.
Night, ma'am, that is okay.
Night is fine, ma'am.
Night, ma'am.
Okay. അപ്പോൾ TG എന്ത് പറയുന്നു? നൈറ്റ് ആണെങ്കിൽ എന്ത് പറ്റും? Rizwana thinks another day. Okay. Then TG has no problem. Okay. Everybody says night. Rizwana, നമുക്ക് എന്തെങ്കിലും ചെയ്ത് അഡ്ജസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമോ?
Ma'am, we're recording this anyway, right?
റെക്കോർഡ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്, പക്ഷെ കേട്ടാൽ സൂര്യ ഓൾസോ തിങ്സ് അനദർ നൈറ്റ്, another day. Okay, then we will do another day. And tell me one more thing, another day ഇത് നൈറ്റിലേക്ക് ഷെഡ്യൂൾ ചെയ്താൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഡേറ്റ കുറച്ചുകൂടെ ഈസി ആയിരിക്കുമോ? ഈ ഇവിടെ ഡേറ്റ ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ടി പറയുന്ന സൂര്യ, ടിജി, റിസ്വാന, കുറച്ച് നൈറ്റ് ആയാൽ വിൽ യു ബി ഏബിൾ ടു ഹാൻഡിൽ ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് മൈ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ. ഇച്ചിരി നേരം ഇരിക്കാൻ പറ്റുമോ? Night I have another class. Okay. TG has no problem. Rizwana? Night is okay. Okay. Surya, what time is your class ending? Night? 8 to 9:30. നമ്മൾ എപ്പോഴാണ് ക്ലാസ്സിൽ ഇരിക്കാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്? റെസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് യു എപ്പോൾ തൊട്ടിരിക്കാം? ബിക്കോസ് ഐ ഹാവ് നോ സച്ച് പ്രോബ്ലംസ്.
Ma'am, we'll have it from 6:30 or something, ma'am.
6:30, ആ? 6:30 ആണെങ്കിൽ എല്ലാവർക്കും എന്ത് പറയുന്നു?
Okay, ma'am, because 8 o'clock it might read into the night, so.
Okay. Okay. അപ്പോൾ 6 o'clock ആണെങ്കിൽ there is no problem. എന്തെങ്കിലും പ്രോബ്ലം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഇവിടെ പ്ലീസ് ഒന്ന് എഴുതൂ. ഐ എം ആസ്കിംഗ് യു പീപ്പിൾ ബിക്കോസ് ഐ വാണ്ട് ടു നോ.
Ma'am, 6.
6 is a problem, huh?
No, ma'am, 6:30 is fine because we have prayer at 6 o'clock. So after that, 6:30 is fine.
30 is fine.
Yeah.
TG says her sister has class. Class എത്ര മണിക്ക് വരെ ഉണ്ട് TG? 6 to 8. So what do we do? എന്തെങ്കിലും രീതിക്ക് നമുക്ക് അഡ്ജസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമോ ടീച്ചി?
Ma'am, we'll go the same time on another day.
Okay, now shall we go same time another day then?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am, no hassle then.
Okay. Appa, see, tomorrow I'm meeting you at 9 o'clock. What are you guys doing at 2 o'clock tomorrow?
And what time Rashri ma'am is having class, ma'am? We don't know that, right?
Other evening ആയിരിക്കും 5 something എന്നാ പറഞ്ഞത്.
And 2 is fine, ma'am. The same time.
Okay. നമുക്ക് 2 o'clock ആക്കാം. Everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, it's fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am,
Rizwana,
it's fine.
ഒരു form of tuition ആണ് Rizwana. Okay. Anyway, no tuition will teach you better than this, I hope. Okay. Appa Sheri, please do something about it, child. I'm telling Rizwana. അപ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് നാളെ 9 മണിക്ക് കണ്ടതിന് ശേഷം നമുക്ക് നാളെ 2 o'clock എടുക്കാം. And you are taking tuition. I'm really sorry about that. എന്നാൽ അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ ഒരു കാര്യം ചെയ്യൂ റിസ്വാന, എന്നെ സൗകര്യം പോലെ ഒരു സമയത്ത് യു ക്യാൻ ഷെഡ്യൂൾ എ ക്ലാസ് വിത്ത് മീ ആൻഡ് ഐ വിൽ ടീച്ച് യു. ആ സമയത്ത് ആരെങ്കിലും മിസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ യു ക്യാൻ ഓൾസോ ജോയിൻ വിത്ത് ദം. ഓക്കെ, ദാറ്റ്സ് ദ ലീസ്റ്റ് ഐ ക്യാൻ ഡു. ഓക്കെ, ഇസ് ദാറ്റ് ഓക്കെ വിത്ത് യു റിസ്വാന?
Yes, ma'am.
ശരി, അപ്പൊ അങ്ങനെ ചെയ്തേക്കാം. ഓക്കെ. അപ്പോ റിസ്വാനയ്ക്ക് സൂട്ടബിൾ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ടൈം എന്നെടുക്ക പറയൂ, എന്നിട്ട് ക്ലാസ്സിനും കൂടെ ഇട്ടേക്കൂ. ദർ വിൽ ബി ആൻ ഓൾട്ടർനേറ്റ് ക്ലാസ് വിത്ത് സോനിയ മാം അറ്റ് ദിസ് ടൈം. ആ സമയത്ത് ഞാൻ ലിങ്ക് തരുമ്പോഴത്തേനും എനിബഡി എൽസ് ഹു ഹാസ് ടൈം ക്യാൻ കം ഇൻ ആൻഡ് ജോയിൻ. ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് നോ പ്രോബ്ലം. ഈ സമയത്ത് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പിന്നെ ഇനി എപ്പോഴാ? ഓക്കെ, സോ ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് അബൌട്ട് ഇറ്റ്. സോ വിൽ കോൾ ഇറ്റ് എ ഡേ ഫോർ ദ ടൈം ബീങ്. നാളെ 9 o'clock ആൻഡ് ദെൻ നാളെ 2 o'clock.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
Ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
I
Thank
hope
you,
it has
ma'am.
been useful. If there is any suggestion,
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
anytime.
Thank you, ma'am.